Hello, my name is Meany and welcome back to my channel. The year is halfway over, somehow. Time has flown by, sure. The year is halfway over and I read 7 books, I read 8 books. 8 books, which I'm fine with, because first of all, it's about quality, not quantity. And second of all, there were some bigger books and some books that just took a while. So I'm happy with that. Anyway, here are the 8 books. We got A Prayer for Owen Meany by John Irving. Started this last year. I did a vlog about this. The books that are in a vlog I won't talk about as much because, I've talked about them a lot already. At least it feels like it. So we got A Prayer for Owen Meany here. We follow... I think his name is John, actually. The main character who tells the story is John, or the real main character is Owen Meany, his best friend. They grow up together. Owen Meany is kind of a peculiar kid. He's very small, he's got a very high-pitched voice, but he is kind of religious in his own way, and Owen Meany thinks he is destined for something greater. He has dreams about it. He has seen in his dreams his own gravestone. He knows when he's going to die. He knows it's going to be something heroic, but he doesn't know what it's gonna be. And that is one of the mysteries that we have, Owen Meany and his great destiny. There's also the mystery of John's father and his mom's past. John doesn't know his father. His mom used to go to singing lessons in a different city, and then they find out that she also spent time there, and somewhere there she must have met, or on the train ride there she must have met John's father. This book was fine. It wasn't the greatest read I've ever had. I did like a lot of the more emotional scenes. I enjoyed especially the ending. I really thought it was a very, very well thought out ending. It was a very emotional ending. I think when I first read it I said it was devastating, and I still agree with that assessment. We also see the book grow up with the kids, so we meet Owen and John when they're around, I think, 10 or maybe even younger. And we see them growing up, and as they grow up, we also see the story get more mature. So there, in the beginning, for example, there's no mention of politics at all, and the older the kids get, the more we learn about the political issues of the time as well, because this is set in the 60s, 50s, 60s, around that time. So the Vietnam War, for example, is a recurring theme in this one. And I enjoyed that a lot, that these kids at first were very juvenile, and the story and the language was as well. And the older the kids got, the older the book got as well, or the more mature the book got. I did not really enjoy all parts of that though, because at some point we see 11 to 12-year-olds learn about their sexuality in a very descriptive, graphic way. It could have been less graphic in my opinion. I did not need to know that. But I guess that's also just part of growing up. I gave the book 3 stars in the end, because it was like, just fine. Then next up, we got the second part of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. I have an edition that is cut into 2 pieces, so I got the second part this year and last year, because I started it last year as well. And the first part I got a few years ago. I have to say I was not as excited about this as many other people were. I also don't hate it as many other people do. It seems to be the kind of book that you either love or hate, and I did neither. I gave this one 4 stars. I think part of why I didn't love it as much is because I did read it in such a long amount of time. Also, they were split up exactly in the middle of the story, and that didn't really make sense storytelling wise, in my opinion. I also did read it in French, and French is not my best language, so maybe that also contributed a little bit, though I would argue that I did understand most of it, because it's not really one of those hard to read classics, even though it's really big, and there are a lot of things that Dumas likes to talk about and that he likes to add to his story, and they do add in his defense. They do in the end come back to the story, and it all makes sense, and but still, it was just very long. I still give it 4 stars because I do actually like the story itself. We follow, what's his name? I know the name, Dunn. We follow Dunn. He is like a sailor, a sailor's boy, and then he gets accused of treason, even though he didn't commit treason, by some people that he thought were his friends. He's really naive in the beginning. He then gets imprisoned for life, but by meeting another prisoner, he manages to escape, and then he sets out for revenge a decade later, I think, is when he starts his revenge. Or he really started before that, but that's when we start seeing his revenge unfold. I did also like the language, partly because I think for a book like this, making it less flowery than maybe you're usually used to in classics makes a lot of sense, because this is a very straightforward, honest story, and that's also the language it deserves. Nonetheless, as I already said, I wasn't as immersed into the story as I would have liked. Still give it 4 stars. I still think I should reread it at one point in my life, but I think that maybe a different point in my life would have been better. The next one is the first non-fiction. It's Love Triangle, The Life-Changing Magic of Trigonometry by Matt Parker. This was a 5-star read. It's really humorous. It talks about math, specifically trigonometry. Obviously, that's what the title says. In everyday life, but in everyday life in a way that you don't expect. Like, for example, when it comes to movies, how they use triangles for certain effects. It's really interesting, it's really immersive, and I really like the way the author writes. It is so funny, it's so easy to get into. I have to admit, I did always enjoy mathematics a little bit in school. I liked the challenge behind it. I liked that it is there's like one answer, at least in school mathematics, and that answer will be correct. And if you got that answer, you're done. I really enjoy that about mathematics. So this book was just a lot of fun. Next one is The Crimson Petal and the White by Michel Faber. This took me so long. Not because it was bad or anything, but just because it's like over 800 pages and the font is really small. I did give it 4 stars for like the first 2/3 of the book. So like I would say until let's say chapter 27, it was a 5-star read. And then the last third just lost me a little bit. We follow Sugar, a prostitute in Victorian England, London. And we really see how Victorian England was for the lowest of the lowest. And then we also see how Victorian England could be for people who were a little bit more wealthy, because the person that becomes obsessed with sugar, William, I think, let's call him William, he is really rich. He becomes rich because of his obsession with sugar, because he wants to buy her. Like, he's just buying her. She becomes his mistress. She also develops a certain obsession with him and with the lifestyle that she now leads because of him. We also see a very interesting relationship between Sugar and her mom, or we see more the effects of it, because Sugar's mom is the one that made Sugar go into prostitution. She owns the brothel that Sugar works at in the beginning. And there is a lot of trauma that is shown in this book. So especially when we meet a young girl, I won't say why we meet her, but there's a kid in this story that Sugar then develops a relationship to, like a teacher-student relationship kind of thing. And she just sees this kid and thinks of all the things she had to do at that age. And that was very haunting to read. I think it was done very well. I also like the bits of industrialization and the horrors that came with that we see throughout the book. The issue was that for some reason, at the last 2/3 of the book, the author starts using language that wasn't used at all in the first 2/3 of the book, specifically extremely racist language, words that I would not want to say out loud. And there isn't any reason to do that. It's not like a discussion of racism at the time or of prejudice or anything. There's just, for example, there's one puppet that is of color. So the kid owns a puppet of color. And for some reason, suddenly it's described with the N-word. And it was never said before. There's no reason to do that. And this part of the book, it made no sense. We didn't even see a single non-white person until then. At least no one was described as non-white. So why do you suddenly use that word for a puppet and then just go on? It's never mentioned again. The puppet is, but like just nothing, like there was really no reason to do that. Yeah, and then also the ending was a very open ending, and I'm still not sure if I like that. It was definitely not an ending that I expected, but it's also, I don't know, I wasn't really that happy with the ending, I think. Next one is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. Thank you to my friends who gifted this to me. To that friend who thinks I hate anything that she gives me. That's not true. I really enjoyed this. This was a 5-star book. This is a coming of age story of a young queer Vietnamese boy/man in the United States of America. And the way this is written is by letters to his mom. So this is a very intimate, introspective book into the relationship, not just of the mom and the boy, but also of the boy and America, of the mom and America, of how life is as an immigrant in the US, and of queer people in the US. So what we see is a lot of mentions of the war in Vietnam and of the effects it has had on this boy's family. So there are certain traumatic experiences that his grandmom and his own mother, as well as her sister, have had, that he retells through his life with them and through what he saw at home, what he experienced at home, and also the stories that they told him. And also the relationship between the narrator and another young boy/man that he meets, that he has quite a long-lasting relationship with, and how he has to come to terms with not fitting into society, not just because he is the son of a first-generation immigrant, but also because he is not straight. And to have this added weight on him. I thought this was really well done. So far I've only seen really good receptions of this book, and I think it definitely deserves that. It's very short. I think I read it in like one night. I did tap a lot of things down and underline a lot of things, and it stuck with me for quite a long time, especially the relationship between the mom and the son. I thought was really interesting. He did not hold back at all when it came to mistakes his mom has made, when it came to her punishing him in ways that weren't healthy. But he also, throughout the book, shows that there's still a deep love and connection between the two, and that he also knows that during their life he has hurt her as much as she has hurt him. And I think that was a really important aspect of the book. That is something that we don't get to see often, we don't get to see enough, because I think that the relationship between parents and a kid are so fundamental for our development, and you will make mistakes as a parent, and you can't really do much more than try to show your kid that it's not on purpose and that you are sorry for your mistakes. And I think this book just showed this relationship that at times has been strained really well. Next one, a little bit less serious, maybe. Hungerstone by Dunn. I think I gave it 3.5 stars, verging on 4, mostly because at some points it felt dragged out. The story is inspired by the classic Camilla by, I don't know, by someone. I never read the original classic. This is a sapphic love story. It's less a love story and more a gothic Gothic-esque novel. So we follow Leonore, who is in a slightly unhappy marriage. Slightly may be an understatement, but she's in an unhappy marriage with her husband, who I will just call her husband because who cares about his name. So when the two of them travel to their new estate outside of London, where Leonore is supposed to build up the house, or like to manage its renovations, because obviously she is a woman in Victorian times, so she's not going to do it herself. But she's supposed to oversee it and to take care of it, while her husband takes care of his business, which is, I think it has something to do with metal or stones or knives. Does he make knives? I don't know, and we see it at one point in the story. Didn't really care for his company. So Leonore is supposed to manage the household, but on the way there they find a woman who has had some form of carriage accident. There's no one else nearby. The woman is weird. She's very sickly during the day, but as soon as it gets later in the day she seems to become more energetic. She also has a very magnetic effect on Leonore. So Leonore is at the same time repulsed by her and drawn to her. She isn't sure if she likes Camilla, the name of the woman that they find is Camilla, or if she doesn't like her. She isn't sure if she wants her to stay or if she wants her to be gone. It wasn't a bad book, it was just at times not that interesting. At sometimes it was a little bit boring. At some points I thought it could go on faster. Maybe I just don't like Gothic books. I don't think I've really read anything else that has a similar vibe to this, so maybe that's on me. I don't know yet. I will figure it out in my life, I guess. I will come back to you about that. There were aspects I really liked. I really liked the relationship between Camilla and Leonore, and also especially when they finally get to it. It could have been faster, but it took a while. They figure things out. I kind of liked the character of the husband in the way that I thought he was an interesting guy. He wasn't there a lot, but anytime he was there it seemed like he did something that could have 14 different reasons why he did them, and then Leonore was trying to figure out why. I did not really care for Leonore. Leonore was a little bit annoying, and I'm sure this was absolutely done on purpose in this book. She is weirdly obsessed with pleasing her husband in everything she does, especially in the beginning, and I understand that part of the book is about her unlearning that and learning to do things for herself. But the way she talked about it just felt a little bit flat. It felt like Leonore as a character wasn't really fleshed out to me. So that is why I think I didn't enjoy this book as much as I might have liked if Leonore herself had been a more interesting character, maybe. There is a background story to Leonore that makes things make sense, but I just didn't feel connected to her at all. Now we come to, I think, my new favorite book. I've been reading for, let me think, I'm now 23. I started reading at 5. So 18 years? Not once in those 18 years have I ever cried at a book. I have come close, but I never once had a tear running down my face or have as much as emitted any sound. This is the first book I've ever cried to, and there's not even a really good reason for that, I think. It's not like this is the best written masterpiece you will ever have. It was obviously a 5-star for me because I've never felt like this because of a book before, but don't go into this expecting like a grand masterpiece, because in the end this is a romance story, and it's a romance story set again in Victorian England. Actually, I think this isn't Victorian England. I think it would be a little bit earlier, so around the same time that Bridgerton is set. This is sometimes described as lesbian Bridgerton. I do kind of agree, it is a little bit like Bridgerton, but it also isn't because we aren't in London. We do have 2 female main characters who well, one of them has already been introduced to the ton of the town a while ago. She often plays matchmaker for others, but it's now time to also finally secure her own match, and she's been doing that for almost a year with some guy whose name I've forgotten again. The name of man. They just don't stick with me. Her name is Rosalie. She is supposed to finally settle down with the one guy that has been courting her for a year, and she's almost there, and then a new girl enters. Her name is Catherine. And Catherine's mom and Rosalie's mom, it's obvious they know each other from before, but they hate each other. And so Catherine's mom tells Catherine to make sure that she gets the man that has been courting Rosalie. So the entire book is basically set up on the premise that Catherine and Rosalie are supposed to be rivals around the same man. But the man bores both of them to death. He is such a bland guy, and neither of them really enjoys his company. And whenever they're in the same place, they're both supposed to, you know, be with him, so they always also spend kind of time with each other. And then Rosalie also starts inviting Catherine to trips with her friends, and so they go shopping together, and they just have way more fun when it's the two of them than if there's a man between them. And so they obviously fall in love. As soon as they realize, they're like, okay, well, I guess that's that. I'm now in love with a woman, let's do that. And it's so funny to me because usually when you have this time period, there's a lot of oh, can I really be with her? That's bad, it's bad, I will destroy my family and my friends will hate me. They're just fine with it. They also have a weirdly supportive friend group, I have to say, for the times. It's not, I don't think it's really realistic, but it was a fun book. It was so fun. And then in the end is the reason I cried, and that's because I won't spoil it because it's the end, but it's because of reactions from different people that I think just accumulated for me to a very emotional state. So yeah, but the entire book was just so funny. I laughed out loud at several points, and I didn't want to stop reading, and this was the best read I've had all year, possibly for a few years. The last book is the book that I spent most of my time with this year. The World of Family History by Simon Sebag Montefiore. Yeah, I think you can guess why it took me so long. It's over 1,200 pages, and I calculated that I needed around 2.5 minutes for each page. So yeah, it did take me a while. I did read some of these books while I was reading this just to get a break from it. The book follows families throughout history. Oh, this way around. It is a non-fiction, so we follow real families, and we don't really follow like certain families, but just the way the author does this is he will give you certain events in history, and then he will tell you the people that were involved. And whenever we get to a person who maybe had a son or a cousin or a father or whatever that was also involved in some important historical event, he will tell you. And I think he does that really well. He finds connections and he shows them. And whenever there is a connection, he will also tell you where you have seen that name before. Like, where have you seen this surname before? Because I am bad with names. And that is good of you to do, because I will not know who these people are if you don't tell me. So he does that really well. He calls back not just to families, but also to friends and to enemies and to anyone we've maybe have seen a connection of before. He also, when introducing entirely new strands of characters, so for example when there are new families emerging, he will put a little footnote and say, around the same time XY moved to the US, and then he had a son, and his son was then this important political figure. And that was really interesting. I think he did a great job at researching all of these different connections. It's honestly impressive. I still only gave it 3.5 stars because at times it felt like it was dragging on, and then at other times it felt really fast, and it might just be because some things I already knew and some things I had never heard about, but it made it a little bit confusing. Again, I mean, I grew up in Germany. We do mostly German history in school, and then I know some like general European history and some US history. Don't know a lot about African history except for the German colonies, and yeah, we don't go deep enough into that in German school, honestly. But that's a topic for another day. I know some Australian history, I know some like Indian and Nigerian because we did that in English class, but then that's also kind of where it stops, and I don't know any details about anything except Europe and the US. So that did make it at some times confusing to me personally. I do think that he did do a great job of including non-Western events. I can't tell you, obviously, if maybe he left out something that should have been included, because, again, I don't know anything. But I did learn a lot about, especially Asian history, I would say, was what I hadn't heard before. Some African history, though I have to say that because this is the first time of me ever hearing about this, I don't think I retained a lot of it. I don't think I remember a lot of things that I had no previous knowledge of. So I think this is for me more a book where I will look things up instead of Googling, because if you have books you don't need to Google. Ever. Rereading it would take me so long. I might reread it in a few years, but let's just say not right now. Anyway, so as I think I said, it was a 3.5-star book. I do recommend it for people who already know quite a lot about history and also are not new to non-fiction. This is not a beginner's non-fiction book. So that's the 8 books that I read so far this year. I'm actually, as I said, I'm pretty happy about it. I had some pretty good books, I had some okayish books. I didn't really have anything I hated so far. And that is honestly all that I want out of my reading. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you had a great reading year. If you had any great books or maybe any books you really hated, please tell me in the comments. I'm always very interested in what other people are reading. And apart from that, I hope you had a good first half of the year, and I wish you a great second half of the year, and I'll see you very soon.